Now, a very popular business model that I see, particularly with students, is what we call the freemium model. And this is a relatively newer business model. It's been around for several decades or so, but has becoming quite popular as of recently, especially with the kind of resurgence of app development and all those different things. So we're going to talk about what a freemium model is, as well as some of the challenges associated with executing the freemium model. So for starters, let's talk about really how the freemium model works. Really, it's quite simple. It creates two classes of customers. And so we have what are called our free users. And then we have a second class that are our paid users. And so the way that this model works is I provide different services for the free users versus the paid users. And so free users are obviously not paying anything to me, but I'm providing some kind of services for. And so there's some sort of limitation to those services. And then the paid users have some kind of premium content. And by allowing free users to have access to some content, what I'm hoping is that these free users become these paid users. If you think about the basic concept of a funnel, and every company kind of has a different strategy for acquiring customers, the freemium model is good from the standpoint that if something is free, people are exponentially more likely to try a service than if it's paid for. So instead of if you charged $1 per month, there are still people that wouldn't take the assumed risk of trying the service and paying $1 and obviously being out of money. Now that sounds completely ridiculous, but it's certainly true. And so by offering the service for free, what I'm hoping is that someone is a free user and will try the service and we'll get a feel for some of the different features and benefits that I offer. But those features and benefits don't completely solve their problem. And so in order to really, get the full benefits, of course, I become a paid user, which is the end result that the company is looking for. And so what the company is essentially trying to do in this case is use the free users as a acquisition method to get people into the funnel in the hopes of converting those free users into paid users. Now, this depends on a couple of different things, right? For starters, it depends upon the free service that you provide. In some instances, many people are completely okay with the free service. Take Spotify, for example. Chances are, if you use Spotify, you are likely to be a free user. Now, there are certain advantages to going with a paid-for Spotify account, such as downloadable content, access to maybe higher quality audio. But for a large percentage of people, they're completely okay with not having access to those features and are therefore providing the service for or using the service for free. Now, this works against the freemium model because the problem is, although a service is free for the user, that doesn't make it free to provide. So really, to look at the economics behind this model, you really need to look at two different categories. So on the first end, we're going to look at the paid users. And so our revenue from a paid user is tied to the number of paid users multiplied by the revenue per user. So that's our revenue piece. But in order to determine profitability, we have to also subtract the number of paid users minus the cost per user. Now, from a Spotify standpoint, the cost per user is typically licenses, right? Because every time someone listens to a music, Spotify has to pay some type of licensing fee to the studio or the artist as compensation for using their intellectual property. So that's kind of the first component there, is figuring that out. But then the other problem is we also have these free users, right? And so this is one step to the equation. But then we also have to subtract our number of free users multiplied by the cost per user. Because although the service is free for the user, Spotify has to still pay those licensing kind of royalty fees to the artist or the recording studio that owns the content for the right to use their intellectual property. And so the goal here of many freemium models is to ultimately try to convert as many of these users into these paid users where the compensation is much greater. Now, you're probably wondering, in Spotify's kind of situation here, they do try to subsidize the free users by incorporating advertising into their business model. But the advertising largely is not going to support the entire base of free users. So what ends up happening is the paid users, in this case, end up in most ways subsidizing the free users to use the content and not have to pay for it. And so in terms of the business model, what you're trying to figure out is what is the break even, right? What's the relationship of paid users versus free users that I need to have in order to be able to run my model? With most models like this, like a Spotify or a Pandora, you might have a situation to which maybe 70% of your users are free and maybe 30% of your users are paid, and that might be okay, right? I mean, on a consumer level, you might be thinking, wow, that'd be really frustrating if I operated that business and you had a group of people who just gave away the service for free. But ultimately, that's kind of the idea behind the model is we know there's going to be some free users and quite a few. We're just hoping to convert as many as possible to the paid category so that we can ultimately get more revenue to cover all the costs associated with it. So a couple of things regarding the freemium model as we wrap up. The first thing is you can't give away all of your services for free, right? Ultimately, if the free service is really, really good in itself, you might not encourage people to make this jump down here to become a paid user. That might be perfectly fine staying in this area here simply because of the fact that the service is pretty good and the benefit or the value of becoming paid isn't that significant. Now, the other thing is this does not mean that we can't offer some workable solution to our free users because this is going to hurt the number of acquisitions or the number of free users. And we know that in order to get to more paid users, I have to have a lot of free users. So I can't make the service terrible, otherwise people are going to use the free service and they're just going to leave. But on the other hand, I can't make the service perfect, otherwise they'll not convert to a paid. So it's kind of this middle ground. We're trying to offer some value, but just hold back a little bit so that people are more willing to try the paid for service. Now, one way to get around this, what people do is they offer a free trial. Because the idea of people using something for free forever and having to subsidize them might not be something that you want to do with your business. So by offering a free trial, what we do is we allow people still the ability to try the service, much like a free user, but we include a cutoff date where we say, well, at this point, you should have enough familiarity with using the service to make an intelligent decision as to whether or not it's worth the money for you, to which case you need to pay for it or not. And so companies such as Netflix and others utilize a free trial versus a paid for freemium service because they don't want to provide the service for free in a limited capacity, but rather give you the ability to try it for a period of time and then, of course, migrate to becoming a paying customer after 7, 14, or 30 days. But that's a little bit about the freemium model. It gets very difficult to use depending upon what situation you're doing. It might be attractive from an acquisition standpoint, but again, your success is all tied to having that paid content as valuable enough to get people to justify migrating from the free version. Thanks for checking out this video. If you learned something or enjoyed it, please like and share, and of course, subscribe so you can get updates on additional content in the future.